The 1975 disappearance of Teamster boss and friend of organized crime Jimmy Hoffa is one of the great modern mysteries. Somebody out there knows what happened, and they're not talking, but everyone else has an opinion. Most people think Hoffa was whacked by the mob, because how is he not? After all, Hoffa got cozy with La Cosa Nostra, organized crime, in his rise to power, but in the years he spent away, aka in prison on a stack of corruption charges, the Mafia moved on to a mutually beneficial arrangement with his successor. So when Hoffa returned to the scene after Nixon commuted his sentence in 1971 and wanted his old job back, some guys had issues.
7 days a week I have more fun here working than anybody can have on a golf course or any sport you can name.
It's July 30th, 1975. Hoffa was headed to the Macca's Red Fox restaurant to meet up with two major mob figures, Anthony Provenzano and Anthony Giacalone. The meeting was supposedly intended to end the feud between Hoffa and Provenzano, but the two Tonys don't show. Hoffa waits about 15 minutes at the restaurant before calling his wife to complain he's been stood up, and you know what happens from there.
According to his family, former Teamsters president Jimmy Hoffa is missing. The family made the missing persons report this morning.
The day after the disappearance, Hoffa's unlocked car is found in the restaurant parking lot, but there's no Hoffa and no evidence. Hoffa's calendar contains a note about the upcoming meeting, but that was it. And the two Tonys denied scheduling a meeting with Hoffa and had solid alibis for the time in question. One witness claims she saw Hoffa leave the restaurant in a burgundy Mercury Marquis, along with three other people whom she couldn't identify. The FBI found the car, and police dogs found Hoffa's scent inside. Investigators also found a few strands of hair, but it took until 2001 for the hair to be positively identified as Hoffa's. But the evidence was a dead end, no pun intended. So who was in that car? Well, some law enforcement officers, and even members of Hoffa's family, believed the driver of the Mercury was Charles Chucky O'Brien, who referred to himself as Hoffa's stepson.
Chucky O'Brien was going around telling people in Detroit that Jimmy Hoffa was a snitch, that Jimmy Hoffa was an FBI informant.
But O'Brien and his family denied having anything to do with Hoffa's disappearance, and nobody in the mob was talking. All told, the investigation into Hoffa's disappearance involved over 200 FBI agents and generated more than 16,000 pages of material, but no Hoffa. And in the years since, there have been a number of confessions. Too many, in fact. Hoffa was declared legally dead in 1982, with authorities no closer to solving his disappearance. Back in the day, Frank Sheeran was a low-level Philly Teamster official, which is practically code for corruption, with dreams of joining the mob. But being Irish, that was never going to happen. Sheeran was a friend of Hoffa's and was in Detroit the day Hoffa vanished and was listed as a person of interest in a 1976 report, but nothing came of it. Maybe he helped set up Hoffa, or maybe not. In the 1990s, Sheeran tried to rustle up a book deal claiming his insider knowledge that Nixon was behind the whole thing, but nobody cared then either. Sheeran claimed he hid the body in a house in Detroit, and a 2004 investigation found blood on the floorboards, but it wasn't Hoffa's. And towards the end of his life, the Irishman confessed to a cornucopia of murders, and still nobody listened. Must have been frustrating. But you reap what you sow, and real Philly gangster John Carlisle Berkery laid it out for Slate, saying, Frank Sheeran never killed a fly. The only things he ever killed were countless jugs of red wine. You could tell how drunk he was by the color of his teeth. Pink? Just started. Dark purple? Stiff. Law enforcement officials agreed. Sheeran was full of it. Then Hollywood came calling. Sheeran's defense lawyer Charles Brandt published Sheeran's story called I Heard You Paint Houses, which is mob slang for doing a hit. Martin Scorsese snapped it up, cast Robert De Niro as Sheeran, and in 2019, The Irishman took off on the movie screen. Sheeran died of cancer in 2003, but he got his wish. We're still talking about him. Great movie, but total fiction according to those in the know. Way too many people have confessed to killing Jimmy Hoffa, but none of them are credible. Real gangsters observe the mafia code of silence, omerta, which instantly cast doubt on anyone claiming to have pulled the trigger. And credit where credit is due, whoever did it superbly, leaving no trace to this day.
Jimmy's gone, let's put it that way.
But that means there's no way to prove or disprove anyone's confession, so the claims keep coming. Charles Allen, Hoffa's former cellmate, testified to the U.S. Senate that Provenzano had ordered Hoffa's murder, after which the body was ground up and dumped in a Florida swamp. 7 years later, another organized crime figure claimed Hoffa was buried under the Giants Stadium.
Well, everybody says he's buried right here on the 10-yard line, probably about a foot behind where you stand right there. There used to be a hump right there.
It's worth noting that Michael Franzese, the former mobster, has said on numerous occasions that Jimmy Hoffa's body is wet. Not saying Hoffa's in Florida, just saying. But there's more. Car thieves, convicts, and anonymous tipsters pointed to farms, fields, and homes, and investigators chased down every lead. They even tore down an entire barn for nothing. Serial killer / hitman Richard the Iceman Kuklinski confessed to killing Hoffa in 2006 and said the body was left in a car sold for scrap. In March 2012, investigative journalist Dan Moldia, who'd written a book on Hoffa, was contacted by an anonymous tipster, a distant associate of Anthony Giacalone, one of the two Tonys Hoffa went to meet that last day. The source claimed that on the night Hoffa disappeared, a bookmaker for Giacalone was suspiciously pouring concrete at his home. Police took him seriously enough to investigate the property, and a radar scan picked up something suspicious, so a series of holes were drilled into the driveway searching for human remains. But again, they found no trace of Hoffa or anything else. In 2013, Anthony Tony Z. Zarelli, son of former Detroit mob boss Joe Zarelli, claimed Hoffa was buried on property belonging to another member of the Detroit crime family. But a 3-day search found nothing, and Zarelli died 2 years later. So it seems that so far, at least someone managed to pull off the perfect crime.